Fear, isolation, loneliness. These are all words we've used to describe the COVID pandemic. Those emotions were amplified for Kallen and Nathan Fontenot as they navigated the waters of infertility and a high-risk pregnancy.
It's hard to even put into words. COVID had just hit, so everything was shut down. Up until that point, I hadn't even been able to go to an appointment with her yet.
Kallen went in for what she thought was a routine ultrasound at 25 weeks, but it quickly escalated into an emergency situation.
There wasn't accurate blood flow in his brain, so they measured his heart and were listening to his heart, and they said, okay, we are hearing some dips and his heart rate's dropping. About 2 hours later, I was flown out to San Antonio. Within 12 hours, we were delivering. So we delivered emergency C-section. We had the OB team there, we had the NICU team there, the neonatologist, all the specialists. They delivered him and he was in a little baggie. He was 1 pound, 13.8 ounces.
And like all hospitals, Methodist followed strict COVID protocol with strict visitor guidelines, even for Dad.
Your baby's getting bagged and they're saying, well, we don't know what's gonna happen. There's an infection, we need to run antibiotics, but he's too little. And you're just going through the motions all by yourself.
It was a lot of FaceTime calls and phone calls. Even though we were within a couple of blocks of each other, we couldn't be together.
The Fontenots persevered 100 days, and finally, Kallen was strong enough to go home.
The doctors warned us when we got home, sometimes they still struggle with things, and, we kind of didn't understand how much he would struggle.
He came home on oxygen, so he was immunocompromised. We didn't have to isolate him till he was 2, but it was highly encouraged because his lungs were just so small.
Early on, he had lots of feeding issues. He was vomiting often. He was having weight gain issues.
About 2 weeks after we brought him home is when he started throwing up, and he threw up constantly, all the time.
It was the Fontenot's pediatrician that recommended the services of West Texas Rehab.
So we have a program called the 0 to 3 program. So the kids that were born prematurely can come in and be screened just to make sure that they're gaining their developmental milestones appropriately. So while they're doing that screening, PT, OT, and speech are in that room together. And so they can observe and watch them play just to see if they're delayed, and then we can recommend them for services to further treat those disabilities.
Another concern common with preemies was a developmental delay in his walking.
He had a shortened Achilles, and so he really had trouble walking. He had to walk on his tippy toes to get around places. So in order to overcompensate that, he walked on his knees, and he had calluses on his knees, blisters on his knees for a long time.
Everybody here that is just working with him every day, every week, they're miracle workers, really.
He couldn't even tolerate a puree without vomiting. And so we have gotten him now to where he's no longer gagging on foods, he's enjoying foods, he's putting foods in his mouth, and it's just been a really amazing thing to watch him grow.
There is a carrot.
Family was hearing from other people like, oh, I think you might need to end up doing Botox with him, or might need to see an orthopedic doctor. He may end up having to have surgery to correct this because it appeared there to be so much tightness in his ankles that we were struggling to get his heels down flat. I kind of urged Mom, like, let's give therapy a little bit of a chance before we go that route, and it didn't take long. We were really able to get his feet down flat. I was able to collaborate with orthotics with Whitney Brandon, and we kind of developed a plan for Kallen for some AFOs, some braces to prevent him from going up on his toes.
If they wouldn't have been able to get his Achilles stretched out with the therapy and the braces, it was surgery. It was another surgery for a kid under 3 years old. It's hard to put into words being able to trust people with your kid, especially after he's been through so much.
Not only could they trust the therapist with Kallen, they could also trust West Texas Rehab with their financial burden.
I I think the greatest gift of all really is having a place that you can go to where there's no judgment. You know, if you are having financial issues, you know, when we came back from the NICU, it was bill after bill after bill until we got things straightened out. When we got evaluated here, I remember we both left crying because we were like, what do you mean if we can't provide the financial means that he's still gonna get services? And she was like, no, that's our mission and vision. Like, that's our thing.
Being able to have DSP, the donor sponsorship program, at our fingertips as therapists is such an amazing thing. I can't imagine turning those kids away. It's such a blessing to be able to say, you know what, even though insurance said they're not going to cover this, I think we can do a little bit more.
Having a place that you can go to in the time that we are in now, to where they really do want what's best all the way around. I mean, that's the definition of West Texas Rehab.